Greetings. So, greetings to all. Can you hear me? Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. And the place to be is just me. It's just you. Let me just check my sounds. Make sure I'm good. Thank you all for joining the broadcast. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, click the notification bell. Yeah. And this is going to be give thanks. This is going to be not a daily, as it stands now, every Saturday, either at 2 or 3 p.m. We're going to have the Compost and Causations broadcast. So again, this is one of 3 channels that I have. The other one is called Akhmostist, and the main broadcast is Soul Power Tennis. The primary channel is called The Compliment King, and the broadcast is called The Compliment Kingdom. And this is Akhmostist the Compostist, which who I am, who I be, and this is Compost and Causations. All right. So thank you for joining the broadcast. Kim at 4:32, much appreciated. Right now it's just me and just you. It's all good. We're going to get through. That's how it be. All right. So as you can see and hear, hold on. As you can see, the title of this particular broadcast is called Race and Compost. Now, race and compost. The first thing I want to get into is my experience. And actually, before I even get into that, let's get into why this is even important at all. Well, I think it's important to highlight your experience. We're on YouTube, right? Right? So on YouTube, the moniker is called Broadcast Yourself. So everybody has the opportunity to share their own particular way of being, their thought process, who they are to the world. That's what this platform is about. And so that's what I'm doing. And as a human being, we all have agency to do the same exact thing. Whatever it is you do, whoever it is you are, express that to the world as best you can, be it through art, literature, fashion, music, film, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is your medium is, go ahead and express yourself and tell us about what's on your head, what's on your heart, because we're all individuals, right? We all have a unique fingerprint. And so we were all, adorned, ordained, blessed with the ability to be able to be an individual and share what it is we experience on planet Earth. So bringing it back, or bringing it forward rather, my story, my experiences aren't any different. There's value in all of us. There's value in all of us and all of our experiences. And so I say, share what your perspective is with your experiences in this lifetime. What does that do to other people? When you hear somebody else's testimonial, what they've been through, what they're going through, it connects you, one, so you know that you're not alone. It provides a listening ear or a soundboard or something or someone else to reflect back or give you some feedback on so that you can move on through it or handle it in a more productive, successful way, right? Also, it adds depth to your being because you have more perspective of the overall life experience. Because although we're individuals, we're also all connected. So when you hear somebody else's testimony about what they're going through, you now can understand their experience and kind of get familiar with what it is they're talking about. You know, pretty much kind of get into their world, get familiar with them. And race is a very, very hot topic. It always is. It's always been, since before it's been a social construct or whatever the case may be, it's real. So for me, you look at me, hey, he's a black man. Hey, he's a foundational black American man. Hey, he has locks. Hey, he has more melanin in his skin. Whatever the case may be. So right away, you see me and you start to make distinctions, make judgments, make placements on who I am, and where I could be or what I'm into. So just to get very, very precise, we're talking about composting here. This channel is about sustainability, the macro of it. The micro is more about agriculture and composting specifically. So that's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing here. And race is real. Stratification is real. Classification is real. In part, it's part of how our world that we've created is shaped and formed based upon how we look and how we present. So you get it. Race is important. I just wanted to clarify that, touch on a few points just to add some more context and more background of it all. So that's the synopsis of why I think that this is even important to even speak about. And, just to be real and raw, because I didn't see too many versions of me in the composting world. And we're going to get into that. And I'm speaking about, race and compost from the standpoint of organizational and community participation. So from an organizational standpoint and community participation standpoint, I'm speaking from that space in terms of my experiences. Now, I've worked for, be like, yay, naming names. I'm naming names. I've worked for BBG. I've worked for NYCCP. I've worked for Grow NYC. I've worked with GCF. I've worked with RHI. So I've pretty much used acronyms there. And you can do your further research to, find out who these organizations are. So those were just some of the organizations that I've worked with and or for. So, and just being a human out in the world. So the racial demographic with what I've seen is, I would say, such a loaded topic. Like, where do I even begin? I'll start with what I just touched on in terms of I didn't see too many Black folks out there like me. Let me get some more light on like this side of my face, because the sun is coming. For my other two broadcasts, the studio is more set up properly and professionally. Compost and causation, we're still kind of building it, so you may not see why does my mic keep muting? Apologies about that. Just want to make sure I'm coming in. Hold on. All right, you can hear me. You can hear me. Okay. And anybody in the chat, again, feel free to ask a question as I express and share. Boom. So that's that. Okay. So getting into it, right? And working in composting, I've worked in 4 boroughs. Wasn't really in Staten Island, um, for composting, so not able to speak on that as much, but Governor's Island, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and the Bronx. So I've been all around New York City. I've seen different organizations. I've seen what it's like in the office. I've seen what it's like in the field. I've seen the social dynamics. I've seen the racial dynamics. I was in the composting field for 3.5 years. I want to say March 2018 to about September 2021. So that's pretty much exactly 3.5 years in a formal capacity. I'm always going to be a composter. I'm a trained composter. I compost personally at home, and I still educate others as much as I possibly can. So composting is always going to be me and always going to be part of my life. That's just is what it is. It is what it is. But formally, I was in composting for that amount of time. 3.5 years. And I was able to see and get a good judgment on how the systems operate in the city. And from a racial standpoint, what the dynamic or live dynamic was amongst everybody. Now, whether I'm out in the field for the most part, or whether I'm in the office for the most part, there's a minority of, I don't like using that word, percentage wise, it's probably anywhere between 5 to 10 to 15%. Let's just say 10% Black folk in that space. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. Now, there's stratification. You have the managers, you have the organizations, the CEOs, directors of departments, managers, assistant managers, and then you have all these other titles that are more like in the field kind of titles. More often than not, what I would see and witness and experience is that those who are in the top tier positions, who have power to implement policy, create policy, make choices for an entire organization that could affect entire communities of people, food-wise, access to food, agricultural-wise. The people who were in those positions, I would say 90 to 95% were Caucasian people. And that's just me trying to be like, well, maybe I missed some people, so it can't be 100%. So let's not say it's 100%. From what I saw, it was mostly 100%. But let's just be fair, or let's just say, you know what? 90% were Caucasian people of European descent or European ancestry. You get it, what you might call white folk. Only a small fraction. I'm trying to recall a director of a department who was Black. I'm not able to. Not only that, they were mostly men, but that's a different conversation. When you get into the managerial positions, it's like, tier 3. You got the CEOs, and then you got directors, and then tier 3 is like managers of departments. Again, they were either Caucasian, some of them were Asian, And to be 100% direct, a great majority of them, or a good amount of them, identified as being gay or part of the queer community. I didn't see too many Black people as a manager or director. I didn't see any Black people who were heterosexual who were a manager or director. It didn't exist for the most part in terms of being Black, self-identifying as Black. And when you see them, oh, they're Black. They're either African, West Indian, or foundational Black American. Now, however, on the site that I worked on, my primary site, things were a bit different because the person who was the manager, tier 3, he was a man of color, could be classified as such, a man of color. He is half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. So he would be classified as an Afro-Latino. And, at certain moments, he might be like, I'm a Black man. I'm a Black man. I'm a Black man. And I would rock with him and be like, yeah, you are a Black man. At the end of the day, people don't know you. They might be like, oh, he's a Black man. When they dig a bit deeper, they might be like, oh, he's, he looks Black, but he's something else, or something else is there. And sometimes he switch back and forth, to be like, oh, I'm, Black, and then, I'm, Spanish, or I'm Hispanic. So it's like, all right, you're kind of all over the place with it, man. But he was an Afro-Latino. So he's a person of color. But he's not Black in that way. But he was an anomaly. Thankfully to him, he hired a Black man. That would be me. He selected me and hired a Black man. And he was semi-forced or presented to hire a Caucasian man right alongside hiring the Black man. Because just having a Black man and an Afro-Latino running one of the more popular sites in all of New York City, world famous, gotta throw somebody in there who is of the other creed. Not saying that they weren't qualified. I'm just sharing my experience and from what I know. He wanted me, he selected me. And then the organization that we work for was like, yeah, we have somebody else in mind as well. Maybe you should at least interview him. And my manager was like, all right, cool. But I chose the person who I want already. And the organization was like, yeah, we hear you, but maybe consider bringing this person in. So I think somehow or some way they were able to hire us both, which was a blessing because we were an incredible trio and had some great memories, some challenges as well. But, I'm paraphrasing, but some of that is true and some of that stands. So that's the racial demographic and makeup with how things were organizational wise. Now in the field, I want to hear some of that background music. Can I hear the background music? Let me hear something. Now in the field, yeah, we can hear some of that. In the field, the majority of, let me just change this up real quick. The majority of the employees or the quote unquote workers, depending upon the organization, it was a mix. It was a mix between Caucasian, Asian, Hispanic, Black. It ran the entire gamut. So in the field, in terms of employees who were at the green markets, employees who were at the composting sites, working at the composting sites, that was more of a diverse array of human beings, Middle Eastern. And, and saying that there was a manager at one of the sites who was half Middle Eastern and half Hispanic. So he was a man of color as well. Salute to him. And then his was he the manager or the assistant? I think he was the assistant manager. The manager of the site and director of that location was a Caucasian man and a Caucasian woman. Those who were in the field, that was now for an organization that was training young people, like coming out of high school and going into college, take like a GCF, 90% of them to 95% were Black and brown people, were Black folk and Latino folks. So it was an invert. At the managerial level, directors, CEOs, managers, 90% Caucasian. In the field, 90% Black and brown. So pay attention. That's just what it was. That's just what it was, right? Now that you have the racial dynamic or the racial demographic and how the setup was, how did we get here? How did we get here? Now, Black and brown people, although I'm going to focus in on Black, for this moment, I'm going to include Black and brown, that being Black and Latino. We come from indigenous cultures. We're an ancient people, be it in Africa, Central America, South America, North America, Australia, so on and so forth. In ancient times, the majority of the world was way more browner. We had cultural customs. We had ways of being. We composted back in ancient times. It may not be in the same exact way that we do it now, but we were in tune with nature. We grew our own food. We hunted our own food. We made use of every part of an animal or a piece of fruit. Whatever it is we had, we made the most of each component of that object or that item, because our intent was to not let anything go to waste. Use it all. This is sacred. This is special. We're going to use it all. So we were in tune with nature. We were living in nature, living in the forest, living in a home structure that we built from the forest elements, living in the jungle. From the elements that we built from the jungle, we built a home, a hut made out of brick, made out of wood, made out of sticks, made out of mud. Ancient Egypt, I mean, you can get more scientific and be like metal and steel and gold and all of that. We took the natural elements that were in the environment and made structures and made community, had systems, had infrastructure in place. We had societies. We had culture. We had customs. This existed in ancient times, thousands of years ago. Some may posit tens of thousands of years ago, and some may go back even further than that. So we always had the information about how to be in tune with nature. We're talking about agriculture and growing our food and harvesting our food and caring for the land and being one with the land, and composting. What do you do with the waste? How do you include it back into the system that you have to make it an ecosystem, to make it sustainable? That's what we were in ancient times. And foreigners who came to our lands saw what we were doing, and us having a loving heart and a hospitable spirit, we welcomed them in and taught them our ways, taught them how we were living, taught them our skills. We saw them as guests in our land. Now, eventually, they didn't see us the same way. They saw us as a come up, as an opportunity. In some ways, they tricked us. In some ways, they just flipped it on us and was like, thank you for this information. We're now going to do this with it, and we're going to get rid of you. Or we're going to take this information back to our homeland and spread it over there. So we were the original teachers and educators as Black and brown people on planet Earth about with sustainability, with agriculture, with composting. We had to be the ones who were warning the Europeans and being like, hey, you probably shouldn't cut down all those trees that fast without doing this. Hey, you probably shouldn't keep on growing in that same exact soil without doing this. Hey, you probably shouldn't be burning that for long periods of time without doing this first. We were trying to direct them and guide them to not create gases, emit fumes, or create conditions that would be bad for the environment and the atmosphere and the climate. That was what we were doing. And at some point, over the hundreds of years or the thousands of years, as they, like I said, switched it up on us, flipped it on us, deceived us, cheated us, or just took that information and then hid the rest, as our societies got destroyed, or they did their part in destroying them. Without going a longer live-a-log about it, our present condition today, where we at today as Black and brown people. We don't own the majority of the land, at least in the West, or even in Africa. Pick a continent where Black and brown people own a significant amount of the land. We don't. We don't have access to or own, quote unquote, the majority or a significant amount of the resources of the land, of the planet, of the earth. We lived a way where we could pick our own fruit, grow our own food, raise our own cattle, find fresh water, breathe fresh air. Now we're paying for water. Now we're paying for food. Now we have to buy land from the people who we originally taught. So they flipped it on us. Now, I'm not getting into full-on judgment of that means X, Y, and Z. I'm just stating what is. But that's how we got here. And what I'm saying is that the systems that I've experienced in the composting world are still in place to keep that way of being with how we got here and with where we're at now. The systems that I've witnessed are in place for the most part to keep that continuing, to keep that the same way in the future. You know, I've been a part of so many conversations and trainings to help shift that and change that narrative and be more inclusive and allow all parties to be more informed and be more understanding and empathetic about the conditions and situations of what's going on in Black and brown people's communities, you know, with waste, with toxicity, you know, that's coming from the systems that we have and being, you know, being and living in food deserts, you know, and not having access to clean drinking water in America. While you go to the white part of the town, they got clean drinking water. This is in America today. Jackson, Mississippi, Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. Just to name a few. So that's how we got here. That's where we're at. And I'm saying that the systems that I've seen for the most part, are still maintaining that. Now, to be fair, there's opportunity there. There's opportunity for a Black and brown person to be able to make change, to make a significant footprint. I'm not centered. Let me move over just a little bit. For a Black and brown person to leave their mark, to have their voice be heard, to create something. That opportunity is there. It does exist. I've seen it come to life. My manager at the site that I was a part of, we did some of that. We were creating programming for all age ranges, inclusivity for all kinds of people, more than any other site, because we weren't using machines or fossil fuels and just using hand tools. We had the opportunity and the accessibility to be able to allow a group of sixth graders who are special needs students to be able to come onto the site and do some composting work and be at peace and feel safe. So we were creating infrastructure. We were creating programming. We were climbing and building on a tradition that had been put in place. That's what we were doing. Now, was there as much access to get promoted, to go into upper management? That I didn't see. The majority of upper management, like I shared, were still Caucasian people. And as much as they talked about creating an opportunity and some more trainings, and let's have a conversation about how we can change that dynamic and have it be more inclusive and, have more seats at the table for all kinds of people. The talking was good. The training was good. I think some good came out of that. Some seeds were planted and they're growing. So I think that it did bring about some change and it was beneficial on some level. Not going to negate that. But overall, things are still pretty much the same upper management wise. So with that being said, who's promoted? Well, I've seen people of a lighter shade come in and get promoted quicker than those who are of the Black and brown shade. I've seen people who are Caucasian do some reckless stuff at work and not lose their job, not get demoted. Whereas it's like, if that was a Black person, a brown person, that person would not get that many opportunities to do what they're doing. It's just blatant, obvious mistakes. So it was like, this is interesting. So that was one observation of being like, something is not balanced here. Well, I've mentioned several observations of something is not balanced here. Right? So who's promoted? Not Black and brown folk overall. Now you have some Asian people who were gaining their way, and the Asian component to composting in New York is fairly strong because, Asia, they're their own country. The infrastructure is modern in most Asian countries, but there's also part of the country that's very, very still more natural, agricultural based, their diet. And so New York, Brooklyn, Queens in particular, Manhattan has a huge Asian population. So for you to, and not just Asian population who have power. You can go to Chinatown, you can go to Queens, and you can go to Brooklyn, Sunset Park area, and you can see stores in Chinese, written in China. The signage is written in Chinese. You can see banks with Chinese letters on it. I'm like, oh, this is a Chase Bank. This Chase with Chinese words, so it's Chase China. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can go to different places and see Korean Town, Little Japan. There's places where you can go in the boroughs and see that right now that exists. And so I'm sharing that to share that not only are these people there as a community, as a race or group of people, they have power. They have policy in place to protect them. They have political power. They have cultural power as a people in a country to go back to. Whereas Black and Latino, not so much. Without going into a larger history lesson, you know what it is. I'm just stating the present condition and trying not to get into so much of why it is the way that it is. I've already touched on that enough. We can expound upon that in a different broadcast, but the situation is what it is right now. So whereas Black people, also how we got here, foundational Black Americans, which is my lineage specifically, my ethnic group, there's no other country for us to go back to. The majority of us don't know where we came from on the African continent, or we're a hybrid of African, Native, and some European. So we've been disconnected for so long from the motherland, Africa, for hundreds of years, that we can't just hop on a boat or a plane and be like, oh, let me go back to that nation and be a part of that nation, that country. Even though my DNA might say I'm 50% this, it's not going to fly that easily. One person, sure. A few people, it's possible. A group of Black folk going to Africa saying, hey, we're Igbo and we're here to, attain the resources and receive the resources that are available to Igbo people in Nigeria. Nah, not really going to happen like that. History would tell us it ain't going to happen like that. There's going to be more that you have to go through for that to be a reality. So saying all that to say, foundational Black Americans have been through the transatlantic slave trade, or as some may say, the Ma'afa. And that disconnected us from our natural selves in a lot of ways. That system, that experience was meant to strip us of our culture, our language, our heritage, and give us something else, give us the quote unquote slave master's heritage or the slave master's mindset, or what the slave master put together for us and said, this is your new way of being. This is your new life. This is your new culture. I'm forcing this upon you by book and word, by sword, by whip, by stick, by gun, all of that. And so Black folk in America spent hundreds of years of being in the fields and working outdoors and being forced to work, quote unquote, for free and slave labor, sun up to sundown, and deal with bugs and deal with the sun and deal with the elements all day, all seasons. We were forced to do that against our will for the most part. So now, once, emancipation came, liberation came for Black folk, and you fast forward through the timeline of the mid to latter 1800s to 1900s, once, as the world changed with the Industrial Revolution and then the technological revolution, because we are disconnected from our natural selves and our natural home continent, Africa, and then we were forced to be outdoors in nature for so long. Once we weren't in that situation or condition again, a lot of us detested everything that came along with it, or the majority of what came along with that. And so you see a lot of Black folk now who are predominantly those who are in the inner city or from the city region, who don't like being in nature, or who are unfamiliar with being in nature. They may not know how to start a fire, find fresh water, clean the water, how to identify trees, how to identify food, how to grow their own food. If you live in a food desert, what information are you getting that teaches you how to grow your own food? They don't like the bugs. That's like one of the main things. They don't like the bugs. They're afraid of the bugs. So it's like there's that disconnect. Like, man, you don't like the bugs. You don't want the sun beaming down on you. You know what I mean? You don't want to be working in the field, bent over, sticking your hands in dirt, growing something, planting something, tilling to this, that, and the third. That's what our ancestors did for hundreds of years, and they were forced to do it. I don't want to do that. So something in our DNA is like, we don't want to do that because that's what our ancestors were forced to do. And it brings up that trauma of being in the field and growing something or picking something. So although it's a beautiful thing to do as a human on planet Earth, there's that trauma that's there for a lot of us that kind of forces us or makes it hard for us. It forces us to detach or makes it hard for us to connect with being in nature, with being in agriculture and being in composting. You know, it's like, I don't want to be around this stuff, this smelly food, this dirt, planting stuff. Like, the hell am I, a slave? Like, I'm not working in no field. What's interesting now is that you have the majority of the people who are in the field or who come as volunteers to farms, to composting sites, still talking about composting and agriculture. The majority of the volunteers who come to volunteer are Caucasian folk. So it's like they're the managers in the formal institutions and companies. And then in the field as volunteers, they come and they volunteer to connect with nature as a form of therapy, to learn the skills. For those who don't know the skills, to learn the skills. For those who are rusty, to sharpen the skills, to hone their skills, to meet others who are on a similar journey and path. So they're taking advantage of it. They're like, wow, there's a farm right there. I can volunteer for 3 hours and walk away with learning something new, helping some people out, helping a farm out, meeting some new people, and walking away with some free food some food that I've earned. It's a win, 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 win. Why would I not do that? Whereas Black folk who live in the same neighborhood, it's challenging to get them to come out and be involved in mass as volunteers who are not getting paid and not part of an organization. I'm not saying there's not individual community members who don't come out and do things. They do. But in mass, where there's poverty, it's hard to get folks out of their situation and go volunteer at a farm. When you're in a situation and setting where there's high poverty, there might be high crime. It might be a food desert. There might not be a lot of trees because there's tall buildings around you. So it's like the disconnect is happening with our people on so many levels to be like, they're mostly in and around buildings. They live in these small apartments, not many trees, not a lot of access to healthy food. But if they go 2-3 blocks down, they can get some food from a farm. But then it's like, wait, I got to go to a farm to be in a field? To get dirty? I'm in the field bent over picking something I'm cool. I'm not a slave. Plus, if I wanted to do that, cool, but I got to work Times are hard. The budget is tight. I got to work. Volunteering is cool, but I could be using that time to go work to feed my family. Under the table, over the table. Legally, illegally. I could be out here getting this money doing X, Y, and Z. Or I got 2 babies, they got to eat. They need supplies for school. I got to take care of my family. Or I'm working 2, 3 jobs. I don't have time to volunteer like that. These are actual conditions of our people. Whereas Caucasian folk who are volunteers, overall, they come from families, settings, and situations that allow them to have more time to volunteer, where their budget isn't as tight. They don't have to work as many jobs. Because they don't come from poverty. Overall, I'm not saying that there's not Caucasian people who don't come from impoverished backgrounds or who aren't struggling or making ends meet. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying overall, the majority of the race of people, especially in a highly densely populated place like New York, the majority of Caucasian folks who are here don't come from impoverished backgrounds. And so they come from educational systems where they see themselves in the education. Or they come from Maine or Vermont or Tennessee, and they will go on field trips or have programming that taught them how to grow food, taught them about composting in grade school. Whereas if you live in the inner city, in order for you to be out in nature, the closest place is the park. For you to go somewhere else, you got to hop on a bus. Whereas Caucasian folk, they could have a front yard, backyard. And so they might have grew up with their parents growing some food. Whereas most Black folks, especially in the city setting, they don't have that commodity. They don't have access to that. You living in a box, essentially. You live in close quarters. So you don't have a front yard, backyard to be like, let me try to grow some celery. Let me try to grow some carrots. Let me try to grow some kale, some spinach, or some chard. It's not like that. So our situations and conditions as races of people is different. And this transfers over into all the other areas of agriculture and composting that I'm talking about. These people, Caucasian people, have access to the information, to the resources, to the natural settings, more than Black folk, more than Black and brown folk. So they have that competence. They have that confidence of, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. They release that, I'm in the field getting dirty. They're just like, I'm not a slave. I'm here learning a skill. I come from money or a middle class or lower middle class, upper middle class. I'm just here to learn and build upon the resources that I already have. So we're coming at sustainability from 2 different places. We're coming at composting from 2 different places. And I'm just, sharing some further background about that, With that being said, there are initiatives in place in the communities, to help Black folk, get more involved in composting, in agriculture, in sustainability. So some initiatives do exist. I'm not going to negate in front like it doesn't. It's just hopelessness. 2 things. We always have agency in our lives to make a change. We're not completely helpless as Black and brown people, as Black folk to be specific. We always have some say so. We always have agency. We always have power in the matter. Yes, we are the victim, but we can also be the victor. So that's 1. 2, there is opportunity there by way of initiatives to help you get more involved, to be more skilled, to be an agriculturalist, to be a composter. It exists. It depends on if you show interest, if you get exposed to that as a younger person. So that access and that availability is very, very key. You got to put it in front of them and make it important and compare and make it important in comparable to other things that are important to Black folks. But however, other situations have us, focusing on other things in life. So I got an issue with the Caucasian folk who have these systems in place to keep them as is. And I got an issue with the Black folk who are not doing enough to explore a bit more and just, switch it up. So in that way, I'm balanced and I'm an equal opportunity, I'm an equal opportunityist, whatever the case may be. So that's there. Moving along and bringing it to more of a close. My dynamic as a Black man, in the space, at some point, 85 to 90% of the staff got laid off when early 2020 came because of the global pandemic and because of budget reasons. So it wasn't about race, However, on a macro level, the majority of us who were in the field as Black and brown folk, got laid off. Whereas the majority of the people who are in upper management or in the office didn't get laid off overall. Some folks did, some folks didn't. But because the job market and jobs in these organizations became more scarce, because the budget got tighter, it was like, who are we laying off first and who are we keeping on and what are we doing? Started seeing folks getting promoted who didn't look like me. And that came from their hard work. But also I think that it is that racial dynamic where they're hiring their own, So my experience, like I said, the majority Caucasian or Asian, not Black and brown, and they were gay or bi or queer. So it's like the acceptable way to be, that was okay, was to be a part of the queer community. It was like manager after manager after manager. It was like, this is interesting. Not placing judgment, just speaking on what is and what was. That exists. It's my experience of what I've seen in the composting world. All right. Now with women, they don't see too many guys who look like me who are working in the composting world, working at a prominent site, working at a prominent institution, prominent organization. And so when they see a Black man who's good looking, smart, healthy, fit, it's like, oh, he has a prominent position at a prominent site, at a prominent organization, at a prominent institution. Oh, he's special. Who's he? How did he get here? How is that possible? And he's still here a few months later and a few years later? Ooh. And so they're attracted to that. And so I had access to all kinds of women, but because the majority are Caucasian women, plenty of access to them. Them approaching me, me approaching them. So it became a thing. And I definitely indulged in it. It is what it is, Now, some of the pros of my experiences or the dynamic of where it's at now is that there's still an opportunity for Black people and Black and brown people to create their own way. To either create their own organizations instead of waiting around or trying to convince the mind of other people that we're valuable, we're competent, we're confident, we're worthy, and that we should be in these positions of upper management. For those who want to stick around and take on that task and continue to have that journey, I salute you. Do your thing. I'm not one of them. I encourage people to start their own. But whatever way you're doing it, keep doing it because it's important. So there's still an opportunity for us as people to create a way to change our condition, to convince people who look like us this is important. You got to know the basics: food, clothing, shelter. If something happens and no water comes out the faucet or the water's contaminated, how do you get fresh, clean drinking water? If something happens and the grocery store is closed or there's no more food on the shelves, how are you going to eat? You got to feed yourself. You need that sustenance. You need the skill set. Yes, you need the land and you deserve the land as a form of reparations that was promised to you and that you haven't gotten yet. But we're fighting now to get. Yes, you deserve that. But until you get that land, utilize the land that's available, that's owned by other folk, to learn the skills, to have the experiences, to become competent, to become confident in what you're doing. And take the food and take the skills back to your family, your community. Because they can never take it away from you now that you learned it, now that you've learned it. So there's still an opportunity there. So that's a pro for sure. And you get to have access to meet all kinds of people from all around the world, from all walks of life. And I'm not saying that, all Caucasians in these spaces are bad. Not what I'm saying. I'm not here to place direct judgment. There's some of that because I'm giving historical information, historical fact and context to it. That's what I'm doing, right? So that's just what it is. But the opportunity exists to expand your horizons and do something potent with agriculture. Be a part of sustainability and eco awareness, because that's the present and that's the future. There's big money there. There's big opportunity there. And it's the way that our world is going. We've always been the caretakers and keepers of the planet. Please continue on with having that legacy and building upon that. That's our commitment, our job. We were the original teachers of all humans and all humankind. Let's continue to do that. The con is that there's so much red tape and so much politics that, so many hoops that you have to hop through to have access to the resources, to have access to changing the policy, to be a manager as a Black person, to be a director of a department as a Black person, to create a reputable organization as a Black person and be funded by corporate structures, donations, however you get it. It's possible, but it has appeared to be more challenging as a Black person. So that's a con about it, is that it's going to be, I want to put that on you as a Black person, Black and brown person, but it's going to be, you're going to face challenges that your Caucasian counterparts are not going to face. It's just the way of the world. It's how they've set up the system, and it's just how things are presently. So be prepared. Be prepared. However, we're still making triumphs. I left my mark. I'm Akhmostist the Compostist. I earned that name in the realm of agriculture and composting, and I'm doing something with it. So make your lane, create your own way. That's what I'm doing. Create your own thing. Do your own thing. If you can't start an organization, or you can't go out to the farm, or you quote unquote can't do this or can't do that, or it's hard to do this, hard to do that, or it's challenging to do this and do that, I get it. I understand it. Do what you can do. For me, this is what I can do with where I'm at right now. Let me highlight this comment. Kim at 432 says composting and growing must be give to the largest consumers to withstand life, economics, and more. True indeed. To paraphrase that, the opportunity, the resources must be given to the largest consumers, which Black folks are. We spend a lot of money. We consume a lot in this capitalistic society. But he's saying that they're saying that should be given to us to withstand life and economics and more. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. And I agree with that. It must be given. Depending upon how you're looking at it, it must be taken. Whatever it is, it should happen. All right? It should happen. So, but to close it out, make your lane, be triumphant. In the face of adversity, we've been through it. It's what the human being is made of, regardless of what race and creed you are. The human spirit and the human fortitude can do great things on planet Earth. It's always been done since we've been here. And as Black folk, our beauty, our benefit, our upside and downside is our heart to love and care for humanity and the planet. Because others who don't have the same kind of heart or spirit take advantage of that. And it's happening over and over again. So I say that we need to fortify our spirit, fortify our minds, fortify our bodies with healthy sustenance, and fortify our hearts, and not just be so loving and open for all people for all time. It's unfortunate to take that approach, but we got to be able to switch it up to get a different result, because we're doing the same thing over and over again, like we're in some weird loop of expecting or trying to convince or just waiting around, and it's not happening overall in mass. It's happening. We're seeing a shift on the planet right now. It's happening. But I'm trying to speed that along as much as I possibly can in my lifetime. You know, so that's where we're at. Be triumphant. Be triumphant. What will it take to have a shift? Since 2020, have things changed drastically? Now, I haven't been as much in the field formally, not in the field. I have my own composting business that ended about just over a year ago. So I saw what's out there. I'm not as formally, no, it's actually formally. I'm not as involved as I used to be, but I still see things. I see who's on the forum over there. I've been a part of panels. I've been a moderator. I've been asked to be a moderator, asked to be a panelist, asked to interview this person for their theses. I got eyes and ears in places. So I'm aware. There hasn't been a drastic change from what I know. A rare case that I want to be wrong. But as it stands now, I'm right. So what will it take to shift? I say it starts with the individual. It starts with you. It starts with me. If you are a Caucasian person, inform yourself about the history of this planet, of this world, about European history, about African history, about indigenous history, or our story. Inform yourself. Don't just read books written by people who look like you. Get into other people's experiences, other people's realities, other people's worlds. Do what you can do to pay your form of reparations. Pay your reparations in whatever way you can, by giving monies, resources, access to resources, training, whatever you can do. You see a Black or brown person, a group who's doing something positive in the community, bless them with some resources. or access to it with an opportunity, with some funding. Become an angel investor. Help them to become financially literate. Do what you can do at least one time in your lifetime. It is a race. And I know I'm aware of what you are beholden to on a conscious and subconscious level. And you may not be in a position or a place mentally or financially to be able to be like, for the rest of my life, I'm going to pay restitution, reparations to Black and brown people, Black people, for what my ancestors as Caucasian people have done. I get it. But once in your lifetime, do something. You as an individual, do something. If you can get a group of you to do something, now you're talking. Now you're changing the world. Now you're showing us that you really want to change as a group of people. Until it's a group doing something en masse, it's just talk. So for the individuals who are out there as Caucasian folk who are doing their part, I salute you. I thank you. You know who you are. You exist. Nudge one of your cohorts. At least nudge them and be like, hey, tap in. Let's do it together, or do your part. I did my part. I'm doing my part. Do it. Karma is real. Energy is real. To Black folk, do more. Change your environment in your mind with the music that you listen to, the food you put in your body, and just go for an extra block with where you usually walk. I know it might be challenging, but just go to that farm that's in your neighborhood. Maybe take advantage of that initiative, such as GCF, to bring it full circle. Pros and cons to it all. Take advantage of it. A person who took advantage of a GCF initiative that helped change my life. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have learned so much of what I learned in the way that I did. So I'm thankful to him, thankful to that program, thankful to that opportunity and initiative. So it exists. Take advantage of it. Change your condition. Have that fortitude to change. Want to get better, to be better, to have more, to have that legacy and lineage that you could leave behind. You can do that. Switch it up. Switch it up. Get your hands in that dirt. You're the original man, original woman on planet Earth. Reconnect. Everything so much in society is forcing all humanity of all races and creeds to disconnect from the natural. You have things in you, melanin. You can connect with the sun easier. Take advantage of it. Tap in, reconnect, have agency. You have power. You're the victim, but you also are the victor. Keep moving, keep going. Expand your horizons. Neuroplasticity. Compost and causations. That's where we're at today. I'm Akhmostist the Compostist. Thank you all for your time and your attention and your ear and your eyes. This has been my experience with race in Compost. There's so many stories that I could have shared. So many different iterations I could have shared of this talk. So many different points that I could have made. But this is what came out of me today. And so I'm flowing with it, and I'm thankful for it. And wishfully, you all got something of value from it. And that's where we're at. So for those who are in the comment section, if you want to ask a question or share another comment or so, please feel free to do so. You've been very, very participatory. That's greatly appreciated. And yeah, the goal on any of my channels is to get to 1,000 subscribers by January 1st, 2023, so that my channel or channels can become monetized, because this is no longer a hobby for me. This is a profession. I've invested in myself to get the appropriate training, to build up my skill set, to make the connections, and have some mentorship and tutoring, and do the further research myself and just get better. Now, Composting Causations, as it stands now, is going to be once a week, 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock every Saturday. Soul Power Tennis is going to be on Sunday. I want to say somewhere between 1 and 3 o'clock as well. And the Compliment Kingdom, as it stands now, is every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 or 7 p.m. Then at some point, it's going to be 5 days a week or 5 days a strong, Monday through Friday, 6 or 7 p.m. In fact, I'll be doing a broadcast this evening. And it's going to be a call-in show, call in and get complimented. But that's a different version of myself to get back to Composting Causations. So that's where we're at. I'm doing my part to be consistent with the broadcast and populate my channel with videos and talks like this. Did an interview very recently, got more upcoming, so stay tuned. And yeah, I want to get some branding for this channel and some music like my other channels have. And so that's where we're at the present moment. And so I'm doing my part, and I'm thankful to you for doing your part. There's somebody else in the chat who's been with me through this entire journey of this broadcast. That means a lot to me. So thank you, Kimmit432. I see you. I salute you. It means a great deal to me. We can change the culture to be more productive. You're doing your part because you're here. I'm doing my part because I'm here. We're doing our part because we're here together. So like the banner has said at the start, I'm thankful that we're all here, and let's make it long last. And again, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, click the notification bell. And yeah, we're going to go out in a very similar way that we came in. Let's turn up the tunes just a little bit. Just a little bit. See how that sounds. Nice. All right. So, appreciate you. And as we say here, make sure you stay tuned and make sure you stay in tune. Akhmostist the Compost. Composting Causations. Until next time,